Hi, folks, and welcome to another episode of the Chainbytes 360 podcast, the podcast about everything from cryptocurrency and underlying technologies to current news in the industry. Today, we wanted to talk about something that I think everybody goes through, at least at one point in time in a conversation, says, what do you think it'd be like living off of cryptocurrencies, having no reliance on a bank whatsoever? So in today's episode, we're going to be talking about just that with our guest, Joel Valenzuela. Joel's a veteran independent journalist and podcaster. He has been living unbanked off cryptocurrency since 2016. And previously, Joel worked for the Dash DAO and now primarily writes podcasts for the Digital Cash Network on the LBRY decentralized content platform. I'm Jeremy Snyder, the CEO of BTM Compliance, and I'm joined by Eric Grill, the CEO of Chainbytes. And as always, let's get into it. Joel, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I can think of few things I'd rather do on a Monday than just talk about my life's passions. So there you go.
Well, we really appreciate you carving out some time in order to do that. One of the things that we kind of like to go through with our guests is we throw them through some rapid fire questions. So I'm just going to have at it. If you want to go ahead and just give us some nice one word answers, it could be yes, no, or just something directly to the question. But we'll get started. So, do you believe in ghosts?
That's a tough one, but I'll simply say no.
That's the first time you've asked that question. Okay, that's a good one.
Do you have any kids?
No.
Okay, so you've probably never stolen from any kids' Halloween candy stashes then.
It's not stealing.
I have, but not my own.
Okay. And you definitely own Bitcoin, correct?
Yes, insignificant amounts at this present time.
Have you ever used a Bitcoin ATM?
Yes, several times. I could think of at least a half dozen, I think.
Okay.
All over in countries all over, many countries all over the world.
Perfect. Can you name an unusual item that you have purchased with Bitcoin?
I guess I'm trying to figure out what is the usual item category. Because,
I guess anything. It wasn't a $10,000 pizza, was it?
No, I mean, does it can't do other cryptocurrencies count, or is it, or do you just want to stay with Bitcoin for now?
Nah, I think other cryptocurrencies
Okay,
count.
well, I bought desserts at a French patisserie with Dash yesterday for my anniversary with the missus, so that worked out quite well. I don't know if that's probably unusual because not a lot of people in crypto could spend it and have like a missus, so
Yeah, I hope my missus isn't listening because I don't think she knows how much crypto I have.
Well, you're gonna find out.
They never do.
Joel, are you working in a field that you went to school for?
The short answer is definitely not. The longer answer is could be yes.
Okay. And do you know how to code?
I would go with no, because HTML and CSS doesn't usually count as code, and my Go skills are not to where I know how to do it.
All right, we'll give you that. And what's one of your nicknames?
When I was a kid, Meatloaf, because I was a fat kid.
I had one too, very similar. It was actually Meatball, because I think my head was really round. That's what they called me.
Yeah, that was one of mine as well, although it was albóndiga, which is a Spanish version of that. But yeah.
Okay. Well, hey, I think everybody who's going to be listening to this podcast is going to be pretty particularly interested in hearing about just your adventures and how you've been living off of cryptocurrencies. So why don't you start off with that?
Yeah, so I've always had a keen interest in economics because ever since I was young and learning about it in school, it seemed to me to be it's kind of a science of the way the world should be constructed, because you have a lot of other hard sciences like physics and mathematics and stuff, and by applying those sciences you get something tangible, and then you kind of find ultimate truth in a way. And then with the rest of the world, it's so much subjectivity of like what works, what doesn't, what should you do, what's right and wrong, like all this kind of stuff. Then a lot of it is subjective for sure. But then economics kind of shows an objectivity to parts of it as far as what's a good tax policy. I mean, we see the results, or what's a good regulation thing here. And then you can see countries that apply things differently, or you can see like what's the best product in the world in this category, and like the market speaks. Like it just, you can kind of see like a lot of truth to that. And so as part of that, you learn about the history of money. As a kid, you have like, it came from the seashells after the barter and all this, and then coins. And then there's always that point when you go from like paper money as representations of precious metals. And then you're just like, yeah, and then we got rid of the precious metals. There's like the record scratch of like, well, what happened there?
Right.
Like, it wasn't like, well, we decided, because let's be honest, there is no good answer. There's only, in my view, kind of like slightly malicious answers. There's nothing good right there. And so then the rabbit hole of like the gold standard and like where we are now in the Federal Reserve and all this stuff, which it hit me at an early age, like early teens even. And ever since then, I'm not a very patient or I guess intellectual person. And so I want to like just do things today. And so people talking about, well, hypothetically, if we reinstituted a gold standard, all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, well, can I do it now? Like, you're telling me the money sucks. That's all I have is like a little bit of money. And what can I do today? And then, so somewhere around 2011, 2012, I was looking into, Peter Schiff had his bank that would let you get a gold-backed debit card. And I was like trying to get that. And like, they were, it's not available to U.S. citizenship, but I had an extra citizenship, and I'm like, let me see if I can figure out through that. And like, I was trying to make it happen because I just didn't want to live off of inflationary currency. And then I heard about crypto and Bitcoin and stuff, and kind of in the back of my head, I didn't touch the stuff. I didn't actually use or possess the stuff until mid 2013. And I see that seems to be where I remember having heard about it, but then I look back at old tweets and like end of 2020, I was already like writing articles about and mentioning Bitcoin and stuff. So somewhere around then I heard about it. I moved up to New Hampshire, and on the way, on my drive over, I stopped at a friend's place in Chicago, and we shared a pizza, and he paid me back for his part of the pizza in Bitcoin, which is of course,
no way.
It didn't click until many years later. They're like, oh, okay, that's like a pizza day thing. And I don't think it was intentional. Just
did you look back on that transaction to see how much that pizza cost?
That's what I was going to ask.
Yeah. Well, all I know, I think it was 0.1 or 0.11 Bitcoin or something. That's about how much I.
But you probably lost that wallet. You didn't
it was
pay attention
around
to it because back then, who cared? Right? It was just a couple of.
Well, no, actually, so that was around $13 US worth at the time, 13, 15, somewhere around then. And then at the end of 2013 is when we hit that $1,000 spike. And in New Hampshire, there's this movement called the Free State Project, which is basically a collection of like the most free thinking, I guess, libertarian type people in the world that just decide they want to make an intentional community. So as soon as I got to New Hampshire, I was spending Bitcoin immediately. Like people were selling stuff in it, and I was just like, the local like community kind of farmers market vibe. Yes, and I'll get into that in just a second. But so I basically spent it all the way up to 1,000, and after that I didn't have much left. And then it wasn't until and then I caught the bug right away. This was before like the PayPal Venmo era kind of thing, when people were still just with their card. You couldn't really transfer to a buddy that easily. And so when you go out to eat somewhere and someone pick up the tab and everyone pay them back in Bitcoin, I was like, it clicked. I'm like, this is like gold, but it's like you can use it. But not only that, it's better than the banks. It just anyone can send to anyone. It just clicked to me that this is huge. And so over the next few years, I just tried to use it or get it whenever I could. Like, I gave people like rides at the airport in exchange for Bitcoin in like early 2014. I did some copywriting for the, I don't know if anyone remembers it. If people are old in the space, they might remember the Bitcoin Bigfoot pamphlets.
Oh yeah, you used to hand them out to the
Bitcoin adoption.
meetup
So
groups.
I wrote those.
Oh, they were awesome.
Yeah, so I wrote the.
We were just talking about that the other day. Actually, I was saying there used to be this Bigfoot.
Very small world, huh?
Bigfoot. They used to send them to all the meetup groups so you can hand them out and educate people, and nobody does that. It was super helpful. But thank you. I didn't know you did that. That was great.
Well, thank you. I was paid in Bitcoin to write the copy for that, and it was tweaked a
Who
little bit.
sponsored that?
and the graphics were done by
I don't
someone
know
else.
exactly who was like doing that.
I don't. So I don't know like all the entities stuff behind it. I just know a guy that I knew who went by the name of Sovereign Curtis is the one who told me to do it, and I did it for him. And then he liked the job I did, so he paid me more than he promised to. So that was nice.
Well,
of
I
him.
definitely remember it. And it was
So-
helpful at the time because we were running these meetup groups, and you'd have these new people come. If you had a Bitcoin ATM, you could show them that. But these pamphlets were great. You would hand them out, and they weren't selling anything. They were just educating people, and they were really well written. So cool. So,
Sounds like you
Yeah.
need to bring these back, Joel.
yeah.
Yeah, I need to do something similar of the sort. So basically, I just was like 1 foot in, 1 foot out, kind of carrying on my life, but trying to get into the crypto world as much as I could until towards the end of 2015. I started to feel a little bit like I was, I should be more into this. And some of it was also I was telling people, "Oh, this is the money future. You can live unbanked, all this kind of stuff." And then I kind of felt like I kind of was repeating lines on that. I didn't really know. So I thought I needed to find out through like a self-experiment. So at the end of 2015, I decided I wasn't going to take any more fiat anymore. Like I was
That's
just going to
awesome.
work for whatever, because I got paid bits and pieces here and there for little jobs here and there with Bitcoin. But I was like, what if I just only took that? And so if I just cut myself off from fiat, then I could find it. And as luck would have it, like within a week, I got a job writing for Cointelegraph, and I still write some stuff for them unpaid, just like occasional opinion pieces and stuff. But that kind of got my foot in the door, and then it's been kind of that way ever since.
So I gotta know: were you married when you made that decision?
I was well.
Based off the way you took
No.
that drink, doesn't?
basically no. I was in my current relationship at the time, but it wasn't, So it was kind of like you buying into, she knew what she was buying into long term. Like it wasn't.
So it wasn't
I
like you had to
sprung
go
something
home
new.
and say, "Hey, honey, by the way, we're just gonna go completely unbanked and we're gonna use cryptocurrencies."
I bet this
Yes,
ruins
I
a
was
lot of
living by
relationships,
myself at
because
the
once
time.
you're orange pilled, if the other person's not, I can't imagine. I can't imagine having to struggle. I hear these guys come to the meetup group and my wife hates crypto. She doesn't like me buying it, and what? Like listening to
Yes.
that is
I'm quite blessed in that she understands the principles behind it and understands the technical stuff much better than most average crypto fans. And so sometimes I'll like, hey, we're in the area. Let me stop with one of our crypto friends and have a coffee. And then at the end, she'll be like, he doesn't know what the hell he's talking about, does he?
That's
And just kind of out him.
Your
like,
wife is awesome.
I tend to agree.
She's gonna point out all the FUD for you.
nice.
Yeah, well, that's for sure.
So what are you currently working on? What are you doing today?
Well, I mean, I'm right here. I'm not multitasking as much as that would be tempting. Give my time entirely to you. But I'm trying to think. So I'm editing a video. I run a channel for the last couple years or so that I started exclusively on the Library Network. And then since then, I have it on YouTube and like an audio-only RSS feed thing on all the Spotifys and all them called Digital Cash Network. And so I just do a weekly live podcast, and then I do, I guess, educational videos and things like that on the crypto space from a completely not crypto YouTuber perspective, none of the pumpy stuff, like just trying to keep the focus on what's real and using it as money. And then I did have a series I put out on the channel in 2020 called like How to Live on Crypto that got pretty popular. And I'm going to do a redo starting out like I guess I have a plan for like January 1st or whatever, just like how to live on crypto. But I'm also in the process of coming up with a sequel, which is how to build a business on crypto, where I'm kind of going through all the like what do you have to do for accounting and reporting, and how do you run stuff through an LLC, and then if people need to pay you in fiat, how do you convert that instantly, and and how do you pay employees, and how do you get your website built, and like all that kind of stuff. Just how do you basically run a censorship resistant business, as because you can live well with censorship resistant money personally, but if you get fired from your job or whatever, that's a little bit a little bit censorable, I guess. But when you have a business that you've worked really hard to build, that's almost scarier because you can't just like throw away your business and do something else that easily. You put a lot of work
Right.
into it. And so try to like have a business that they can't just like get you for. You can, it's as censorship resistant as your money.
Well, how?
It's
Because
kind
even,
of
even,
we're
even
in
if
this
you have centralized systems,
Yeah.
the laws governing working and selling and all of that, it's tough, right? I remember when Eric Voorhees sold Satoshi Dice, he didn't even form a company, and they went after him. There wasn't even it was completely
Yeah.
decentralized. Whatever, it was just this little app,
Yeah.
and they went after him. So
Well, obviously, everyone's business, everyone's regulatory climate, et cetera, is different. But I'd like to have a system where people who are out of the official world, like let's say you're running a clandestine business, again, as the official term is agorism, which is it's basically intentional gray markets where you kind of basically want to not participate in the system. And obviously there's some legal ramifications of that, so it's not something I'm either advocating or exclusively teaching people how to do. I'm teaching them how to be able to have a model that works in both ways. So like, for example, with a website, you have your hosting provider and you have your domain name stuff, but also you register an NFT domain on something like Unstoppable Domains, and then you back up your website to IPFS. So then in case they just whack your whole website, it's all still there. You can still kind of run dark. And like, okay, well, maybe if your Coinbase account gets shut down for whatever, you can still get paid and pay people in crypto because you got that yourself. Even though obviously getting censored is problematic in a lot of ways. It's never going to be great, but at least your core values are surviving. It's just like if you have a wood stove heating your house in the winter, and then a lot of resources are unavailable to you, you can always go find some wood and put it back in there and keep going and
So
cook some food on
uncensorable-
there and stuff. So it's kind of the same.
the
thing.
IPFS is backing up, and there's actually you can serve up websites decentralized. So building the decentralized website, that's interesting. I definitely think there's more and more of that. I don't think law enforcement likes these sort of things, and I think a lot of regulatory and government entities don't like them because they can't control them. Obviously, can't tax them.
Well, that's a good thing about it now is right now it's like in the nerd hobby territory. It's fun, and so it's not dangerous. Like there's big, very above board companies involved in all this kind of stuff. I mean, a lot of people who issue website access and stuff like that. Like you can do it through NFTs today, and it's like it's great and it's fun. So you don't have to. It's kind of like making living on crypto and building a business on crypto fun. Like you gamify it. It's like, oh, I got to do this. I do this cool thing instead of that cool thing, and then before you know it, you've been like training your whole life for the veritable apocalypse, kind of.
Well,
and
you
it just
learn
makes
everything.
It a lot better.
A lot of this,
Yeah, you learn everything in the
Well, this is-
process. All the regulations, all the downfalls or pitfalls that you could possibly run into. I mean, you end up getting to learn all of that just like anybody else out there spending, traditional fiat would.
what you were saying sounds like Open
Yeah,
Bazaar.
absolutely.
I remember when those guys were doing that. That was a long time ago.
Yeah. I'm good friends with the lead backend
Oh,
dev
you are? Okay.
for Open Bazaar too.
Whatever happened to that project? Do you know? I'm curious.
Well, from what I know, it just never really took off. Their model was a little strange. I mean, it worked well, but I guess it's just the infrastructure of building the entire infrastructure of like an Amazon type replacement. Just it cost too much to run a lot of the infrastructure bits, and it was just too difficult to manage, and it just also didn't do anything like where people can buy anything on Amazon. There wasn't anything you could really buy on Open Bazaar. You couldn't. It just didn't all the things just didn't quite line up, and so they just kind of had to let it go. And I think that we're going to maybe see some a newer, better way of doing these kinds of things in the future. Like maybe the NFT marketplace idea is kind of the thing where NFTs are the products,
Or they represent
and
the
you
product, and you can can execute and get them delivered. The thing I saw about Open
Yeah,
Bazaar was
maybe.
just it was too complicated, right? Just to get set up, I had to run a node. I had to do all these things to get this thing set up, and then there was nothing to buy anyway. So I was like, well, I'm not going to spin this thing up every time I want to go looking to buy something. So, okay, I know, early adopter, so you struggle through those things. But it was a very interesting idea, and it was an interesting way that they did it. It's just, it was too complicated, and the normal people are never in a million years going to do that. So you had to simplify that down, and I don't think they ever got there.
Yeah, there's on a side note on that thing, there's two things that I think from the experience were it's just two really hard to solve problems through traditional means, through, I guess, decentralized means, or maybe to yesterday's decentralized means. Let me clarify that. Is first off, a decentralized search engine for categorizing products. That's oddly hard to do.
Not oddly, because what do you
And
search, right? If it's all decentralized, where do you find it, and how do you put it together, and what's real, and who's gaming it? And
Yeah, I mean, having a listing of all the products and all the filters and all the other stuff is great, but having an algorithm that intelligently figures out what you actually want, what are the best results, that's surprisingly tricky. And then the other thing is the trust mechanism of, like, how do you buy something, like what's your recourse for returns and things like that. And everything I've known has either been some sort of like, in the past, before the prevalence of smart contracts and things like that, everything was some kind of a janky escrow service where it's like, well, you have to double pay, and then some like democratically elected arbiter holds on to some of this, and depending on the vote, it's just like, that's never going to work at scale. It just has to be able to buy it, and then if there's a problem, there's like a problem. Like, you figure that out.
I think the
and maybe you need better
reputation
reputation systems.
Right? I mean, when if somebody has 100% reputation, has thousands of transactions, they're not going to. That to me is that system works. I know that's all we need.
Yeah, they're not going to jeopardize their
Not
reputation.
usually.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we could talk about this for hours, but just I'm sure you could have some sort of a thing where you have a beta test period where, you know, you have to basically prove that you're completely trustworthy through a bunch of purchases as a purchaser, and then as a merchant. The problem is reputation systems are difficult without identity. And if it's an identity-free system, you have to work on a decentralized digital identity, which so far, like, using NFT systems for that kind of works. But the problem is then there's so much, like, no privacy around a lot of NFT platforms these days, like way less than even like just regular old Bitcoin. So we're getting close to the ultimate solution to all this, but it's still kind of rough. I don't think we're there yet.
Well, I think we're going to, I mean, the technology is out there for sure to do it, but how to implement it in a way that people are going to use it. And, you know, like you said, there's a whole lot of other factors in there. Yeah, I thought OpenBazaar had a good approach, but I think as these new platforms, these second layers, all these things get built on top, it'll be a lot easier to build this stuff. And as it gets easier to build this stuff, you'll see some really creative ways of utilizing it and decentralizing it. And even if the mantra is just always decentralize everything just because you can. So what? So you try it out and see how it works. And sometimes it's not an efficient way to do it, but it's an interesting experiment. And you'll learn something from it. So.
Yeah, you wiggle back and forth until you, from centralized solution, decentralized solution, until finally the experience gets really close.
Yeah, I mean, we did stupid things on chain just to see if we could do it, and then realized, okay, well, maybe we shouldn't do that. Maybe we should just put it on IPFS and put a link onto the chain, because that thing's really big. We had to do like 200 and some transactions to get all that data on there. It was like, it's stupid.
Yeah, of course.
But you learned a lot. So going forward, you're writing, you're doing the podcast, and you're still living on Bitcoin. You're always going to live on Bitcoin or Dash, I guess. The majority of what you're doing now is Dash?
Yeah. Yeah. So at the end of 2016, it was like a good year in. Early mid 2016, I closed my bank account because I hated them, got rid of them. So depending on living on crypto since 2015, living unbanked since 2016, this year with the reintroduction of some bank-like services that still aren't banks, so I just, probably for simplicity, just stick with the 2015 one instead. But at some point towards the end of 2016, the block size started to fill up. The Bitcoin block started to fill up, and the fees started to get high, and the wait time started to get high. And I mean, we're not talking the 2017 like, oh my gosh, it was a week and it cost $100, like that kind of horrendous stuff. We're talking it started to get to like 50-cent territory, $1 like 50-cent territory, and you wait 2 hours. And that started as like a digital casher with modest means. That was a big problem for me already, and like most people didn't have that come to Jesus moment, sort of come to Satoshi moment for another year, but it kind of forced me to reconsider things. I just looked at what else is out there that I can use, because I didn't want to like say, hey, try to live on crypto and it didn't work, and just kind of go back. That would have been a huge. Once you're there, you can't. It's hard to go back. So I just looked at the top coins. It's like, well, Ethereum's not really a money. Litecoin was like abandoned as far as like development at that time in 2016. And then his base Bitcoin Cash didn't exist for another year. So like Dash was the one thing that was there. And so I switched to using Dash. And to this day, it's like, I guess 80-90% or whatever what I use for payments as far as like buying stuff. Occasionally I use some other stuff, but it's for a few years it was the one thing the only thing that really worked for someone like me. Now there's a couple of different options you could probably use, but in my particular set of circumstances and geography, it still works the best and kind of works better every year as far as the technology is concerned.
Funny, I remember during that time, it wasn't just the block sizes were full. You didn't know if the transaction was ever going to get full. It was the first time I saw things go in the mempool and then just disappear. And you're like, wait, what happened? And they're like, oh yeah, that's expired, and it's never going to go through, so it gets rolled back. And we had this whole congestion. I remember we were using Dash, Dogecoin, things that you could move quickly but wouldn't change in price a whole lot. And those are like the stable coins of the time to move stuff around. Because Bitcoin, if you move Bitcoin, you didn't know if it would get there. You didn't know how much it was going to be expensive. You didn't know how expensive, and worse, you didn't know if it was actually going to get there.
That's something funny about Dogecoin is because, first off, Litecoin in the 2017 boom got to like several dollar fees for like a brief period because, because it was just like 2 days because it was the peak of congestion.
So everyone was using
People
Litecoin
could
as
not
the
get there
because Bitcoin was so expensive. Okay.
Yeah, I mean they couldn't get their things off of Coinbase. Litecoin had Coinbase, so they swapped it over because it's not an on-chain transaction, and then they used Litecoin to move. And the other funny thing is Dogecoin has been one of the more used as far as transaction volumes are concerned, like payment coins, over the last several years. However, when it became famous because of Elon, its transaction counts have gone down significantly.
Not all the speculators.
Because it was, it was used to like swap things cheaply back and forth, and then all of a sudden, when the price goes insane, the transaction fee, also went up with that, and then just all the actual use case that kept Dogecoin around enough for Elon to even pay attention with got ironically killed by the attention that he kind of put in. And so,
it's kind of true.
Yeah, it's a lot of people don't know these things. Like everyone's accepting Dogecoin everywhere, but the actual number of Dogecoin transactions has gone down significantly since the fame.
Yeah, but I think that's because we used to just give it away, not thinking it would ever be worth anything. And and that's the thing. You could move large volumes of it because it would just maybe blip up a penny and penny, a 0.00. And not do much of anything, and that was the value, is that you could just give it away. New people, here's a bunch of Dogecoin, play around with it, go ahead and give it to other people, and then all of a sudden it's worth something. Like, wait, I'm not giving it away anymore. Like, I'm going to hold on to my Doge. So we'll see.
Yeah, for sure.
But it works. The thing is, it works. The funny and ironic thing about Doge is it works, and it's one of the most accepted coins on everybody took Bitcoin, Litecoin, and Dogecoin. That was all that existed early on. So Dogecoin was everywhere. And you can move